As you just heard, I'm Lisa Watson, and I wear a couple of hats here in Singapore. I'm chairman of what is, for another week or so, the Direct Marketing Association of Singapore, and I'll give you a little more clue what that means a little bit later. And then secondly, I'm in charge and look after customer success for a big division within the world of HP, you might know. And I wanted to talk today about data, and you've heard a lot about data. Seema talked about data, the power of data, the importance of data, and I thought it would be interesting today to look at data maybe not from a highly sophisticated perspective, assuming that everyone who's marketing has a highly robust data environment. I want to talk about the power of even a little bit of data to totally disrupt and transform the experience a customer or consumer would have with you as a brand. So, and I'll probably mention this little guy along the way. Oops, I think we're not on. So this little guy, everybody knows that little guy, right? If anybody doesn't know that guy, well, you probably shouldn't be here. Or maybe you do need to be here. Maybe you extra need to be here. So I think that, the lesson for us today is our world is changing, and our world is changing really fast. And this is actually quite a challenge for us as marketers. It's even a challenge for us as individuals, right, trying to cope with all the changes in life. And when you look at, this is an interesting graphic, comes from Forbes magazine, and they actually start this innovation curve, I find kind of interesting, at the printing press. And they say that was invented in 1440, which means they didn't do their research because China had the first printing press in 1370. I'm sure that's a little tidbit you all wanted to know. But it took us 400 years to get from having a printing press to having a light bulb. I mean, I think it's kind of amazing. You can imagine how long it took to print something if you didn't really have electricity, right? You weren't really able to power the printing press. It was done as a manual process. It took only 300 years from when Newton had a telescope and was able to see the stars to when Armstrong and Aldrin actually were able to walk on the moon. The latest round of innovation is actually even more surprising. Can you imagine that it was only 1998 that we first had Google? 20 years, next year is going to be 20 years for Google. I mean, they're like old now. Isn't that hard to imagine? But this is what their very first interface, their beta interface, looked like. And now, actually, Vivek mentioned this earlier today. We actually have gadgets. This is from Amazon. It's called a dash button. And a dash button is something you get from them. It's free. You put it on your washing machine, and you just press that button when you need more washing detergent, in this case, Tide. Right? So every brand has their own dash button. Right? And this means that, and I guess you might do it with your thumb or you might do it with your finger, depending on which generation you're in, but you can easily order washing detergent. But that's not all. They have more than 280 different dash buttons now. All the brands are coming out with dash buttons. And look at this, they're in household and office, kids, baby, pets, beverage, and grocery. I'm really hoping there's a Haagen-Dazs one. That would be my favorite, personally. Music, sports, outdoors, health, beauty, and apparel, Amazon exclusives, and more. So a very interesting phenomenon. And one thing for parents who have to pay the bill, some good news is what happens when you press the button for the Haagen-Dazs refill. A text message comes to you, and it allows you to verify that it's okay for that child or other half in your life to order that ice cream, right? So there's a little secondary authentication there that before they actually have you purchase. But completely changing our world, right? So our world is exploding, not just with change in technology, but all these technologies. We talk about the Internet of Things. It's all about data. Every one of these interactions is trackable. If I order that Amazon dash button, Amazon knows every single one of those brands that I'm thinking about buying. And believe me, they sell that information to the brand and say, wouldn't you like to reach that person? Wouldn't you like to talk to that person? Wouldn't you like to send them a prompt, maybe an email or a text message, to see if they wouldn't like to press that tide button just today. I also thought it was rather interesting. I was doing a little bit of research on big data. And believe it or not, 73 years ago was the first time the concept of big data started to come out into discussions. It was actually in 1944. And it came from the library environment, where suddenly one of the libraries in particular, one in the US, Wesleyan University Library, said they realized there was going to be an explosion in the number of books. I mean, they had no idea, of course, in 1944 what that explosion would mean to us and how our lives would be different. But actually, that was the first time someone started to think about the challenge of collecting, storing, keeping, cataloging, using this amazing world of data. 1975, I just pulled this out because I thought this was kind of an interesting thing. The Ministry of Posts and Telecommunication in Japan, of all places, began conducting the information flow census. And they actually came up with the concept of counting words, which I thought was quite an interesting thing, instead of just counting characters or counting pages, right? Because when you had hard copy books, it was about counting pages. Now it's about counting words. 1996, a major threshold was crossed, and this is when digital storage became cheaper than physical paper storage. Again, another milestone. And just 1997 is the first time the word big data was used. I think it's sort of interesting to see, right, in today's world, this data environment. I mean, look, this is 60 seconds on the internet in 2016. A couple of things I'd like to just point out. 150 million emails sent every minute. Half are in my inbox, I think. Every minute I'm here, I can just imagine another 75 million are accumulating for me. WhatsApp messages. How many of you on WhatsApp? Yeah, every minute, 20.8 million WhatsApp messages. Probably a few phone calls and things like that as well. $203,000 a minute spent on Amazon. These guys are really rich, aren't they? Amazing. 700,000 Facebook posts. And I want to just point out one other number, which is more Tinder swipes per minute than Facebook posts. So if you don't think online dating is a big trend, right, more Tinder swipes than Facebook posts every minute. All of this is, of course, because of the phone. Right? And a phone used to be, I think, Seema talked about the ancient technology that most kids don't even recognize. When I saw that phone, I actually was wondering, what's a USB port doing in the front? And then I thought, of course, there wouldn't have been a USB port. We didn't even have that concept. What am I thinking? Silly me. But of course, the phone has changed completely the way we connect. I mean, I remember taking a flight and having to get off the flight and going and standing in a queue to make a phone call to tell somebody that I was going to go wait for my luggage, and it was okay for them to come and pick me up at the airport. Stand in a queue, right? And find a coin was another challenge. And today, of course, the latest count is that we've crossed over the point where there are more mobile phones, not mobile devices, but mobile phones, than there are people on the planet. And this has, of course, changed completely the way we interact with each other. Right? So whether we're with our friends, and I must say this one hits very close to home, when we're with our family, right? We're together, but we're not always together. Kids get together and play, and they all go on Facebook, and they're all separately, and they're including their friends in what they're doing, but they enjoy being on Facebook or whatever together in the same space. So profound differences and changes to the way we connect and interact. The way we work. So I guess I can confess to knowing a little bit about the silver generation, but we used to have something called a workstation. If you think about that word for a minute, workstation. This means your work stays at the station. Can you imagine this world where you actually go and you sit down at a place, a physical place, and that's where you work? But today we don't, right? We work all the time. In fact, we're probably doing email before we get out of bed in the morning. This is kind of an interesting, some interesting data from eMarketer. This basically says that, this says emerging markets, but I think they have these wrong, by the way. 83% of people within the first 30 minutes are already online. That's a lot of people online. 97% within 3 hours. I mean, that's like pathetic. Can you imagine being awake for 3 hours and you still haven't been online? Anybody here wait 3 hours to check their phone or check the internet or whatever? Anybody here in the immediately before you get out of bed? Any confession? Some confession. There are some people back there. Right before we get out of bed, we're already checking to see what's going on in the world. But it's interesting as well to see what we do. I'm sure that whatever I put up here, there are going to be exceptions to it. But look at this. Fully 2/3 of people are connecting with other folks, right? They're sending email, they're checking social media, they're checking their text messages. They're not checking voicemail. When's the last time you were lying in bed and you checked your voicemail? No, we're checking our email, right? Browse the internet not so often. News is not even so high up, which I thought was quite interesting. Really, 2/3 of people are connecting with the outside world. And I have to talk about Pokemon because I put it in the title. But I think Pokemon is a very interesting phenomenon in many ways. Of course, there's this Pokemon Go effect. Everybody knows all the fun of Pokemon. I must say I'm a little bit terrible at it because actually I've been put to shame by all the people that are really good, have a lot of Pokemon. We just had my stepdaughter staying with us for 5 months, and you know, it was like walking the dog. You know how when you walk a dog and you think you're going one way and the dog veers off over here and veers off over there? Well, this was all about Pokemon, right? And it was the first time she'd seen that one and she had to get it before anyone else and show everybody that she had the Pokemon. I mean, it was really quite a crazy experience. But of course, this has had a huge disruption to the world of data. And it was actually at the end of 2016, right? It was Forbes said it was both the greatest success and the greatest risk because, of course, everybody engaged so intensely at the beginning, but for that to be sustainable was really a challenge. And I think it's quite interesting that in February of this year, they actually crossed $1 billion in revenue. So it was the app that got to $500 million in revenue the fastest, and now, of course, it's also the app that's gotten to $1 billion in revenue the fastest. And think about their business model. I mean, what do you think really has value? I mean, is it the Pokédex that has value? Yes, it has value for engagement. Is it the attention that the consumers give to it? Yes, of course that has value. But actually, there's huge value to the data that they're collecting. There is an enormous long-term opportunity to think about what the consumer, what we tell Niantic every time we interact with the app about us, what we're interested in, where we go, how often we go there, what we do when we're there. So, even Valentine's Day, right? There was the big promotion. I guess we just finished Christmas promotion with new Pokemon. In February, they launched 80 new ones just to make sure we don't lose interest. I think another interesting area that our phone has changed is in a way, the way we communicate and the use of emoji and emoticons. I mean, I actually found this article, The Business Etiquette Guide to Emojis. I can't even imagine. I remember somebody gave me many, many years ago when I first started working this book, Letitia Baldridge's Guide to Being a Businesswoman or something, Proper Business Etiquette. And it had all to do with how you write certain types of thank you letters, and utterly useless, completely useless information today. There was, of course, no mention of how you would use emoji. But they actually talk about should you use a smiley or should you not use a smiley? What types of communication? What does it say about you? Right? We actually are thinking about this. And I found also some quite interesting data about what the emoticons that and the emoji that we tweet say about a country. And have a look at this. It's very interesting. So Philippines and Indonesia, we were trying to decide earlier. Unfortunately, we don't have Singapore on here. I'm very sorry to say. But Philippines and Indonesia, they just seem to be a little bit stressed. Must be traffic. South Korea, Japan, Italy, France, they're all really in love. So this is actually kind of good. Look at the U.S., Canada, UK. No politics here, but I think that's Donald Trump. I think that might be Brexit, do you think? Maybe. We have a lot of, stress over there. A lot of nice music going Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, and India. Namaste, right? So we have some serenity and whatever. But interesting, right? That we're even being characterized by the emoji that we use. So Seema mentioned also this, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but another way to think about this new peer-to-peer economy and peer-to-peer environment that's developing is to take a look at what we call the power of zero. Right? And no one really thought you could make something of nothing before. But I actually, my favorite example in a way is Facebook. If you think about it, what does Facebook offer? It's an empty shell. Right? I mean, it's a beautiful empty shell with a lot of communication tools, but there's no content unless we go and enter our own content, right? The only way that we can actually, the only thing that makes Facebook interesting is that we're there and our friends are there and that we're sharing. An incredibly successful business model coming out of that. So there's been a revolution, and the revolution is not just about data, but it's really about power. And having phones and having access to information, having choice in the market gives the consumer power that they've never had before, really in an unprecedented way. And there was a day when we as marketers could tell consumers, our sale is going to begin on Saturday for everybody, right? It's our car is going to come in just these colors, right? We could set constraints that were easy for us. In today's environment, the consumer is telling us what they want and when they want it. They're saying, listen to us. Right? We don't want the world on your terms, right? We want the world on our terms. I love that. I want what I want, and I want it now, when I want it. I have to remember that one. And of course, we know that they listen to us is to counteract the thousands of messages we get bombarded with every day. I mean, this estimate is stayed about the same level for maybe the last 5-6 years, and I suspect it's actually creeping up. When I look at just my own media consumption, I feel I'm getting more and more advertising. 65% of people say that advertising and those messages are not relevant, which means that the data that we do have about people is not being used very well. Again, SEMA happens, this must be a very popular image. We both are using it. But, today's world is about listen to us, listen to me. Right? The generation today, the buying power today is in the hands of people that want to be listened to, that want to be the center of attention. And, they're not saying, shut up and leave me alone. I mean, there are a few, right, that say, forget it, I don't want to have anything to do with the outside world. I don't want to know about products. I don't want to be cool. I don't want to try new things. There will be a group like that always, of course. But most of the world out there is saying, talk to me. Talk to me. Stay calm, but talk to me. And talk to me about what I want to be talked to about. I don't know if anybody knows, Talk to Me Goose, all right? You have to be quite ancient to know Top Gun as a film, but that is actually one of the memes out there, right? Is the Talk to Me Goose from the film. Talk to me in Korean. I mean, if I don't speak English and I only speak Korean, you have to talk to me in Korean, right? We need to talk to somebody on their terms. And we also need to be aware of when we're not supposed to talk and to just be quiet at that right time, right? And that's what really data gives us the power to do. It gives us the power to be relevant. It allows us to move from this world of volume and thinking about treating everybody the same and shifting to having value communications, value contacts with customers, offering the right customer the right product at the right time through the right channel. Right? Without data, we just cannot make that connection in a meaningful and compelling way. And data for us is not just important, it's actually oxygen. It keeps us alive as marketers. It's what allows us to target the right customer in the first place. It's what allows us to personalize, customize the communications that we make to them. And ultimately, it's what allows us, to go dark when we need to be accountable for our campaigns. I mean, marketing investment is a great thing. Marketing budget, marketing expense is a bad thing. Right? That means that it's just an expense and it's forgotten money. But marketing investment, we expect a return on an investment. So we want every dollar to be accountable. So I want to share now some examples of data and how data is transforming consumer experiences. One of my favorites, I have to say, is Coke. And I call this the Coke for Me campaign. So it's share a Coke, but completely different when this is my Coke. Right? This is a Coke. And actually, I have no emotional connection whatsoever to a Coke. But when it's my Coke, right, then I feel I'm connected to that. It changes my experience. It's actually a big part of why the entire Share a Coke campaign has been so successful. So you may know that Share a Coke was around before they put names on bottles. It's actually a long-term campaign for Coke. And it's actually been quite spectacularly successful because if you think about it, the product manager said, well, I have 2 ways I can increase my sales of Coke. I mean, if I say share a Coke, there are only 2 ways to share a Coke. I buy 1, and I drink some, and I give you some, and we share 1, or I buy 2, and we each get 1. So if I can move some percentage of the market to buying 2 Cokes instead of 1, it's very, very smart marketing. Right? You see a share increase just for that. In 2011, it was pioneered in Australia, actually, the idea of putting names on bottles and changing a Coke into my Coke and your Coke. They started out with 150 names per market. And they eventually, in the US, they got up to 1,000 names, different first names, so that you could go into a store and find a Coke with your name on it, with your daughter's name on it, with your kid's name on it, with your boyfriend, husband, wife's name on it, right? And people were buying Coke as gifts. They were doing of course, the obvious thing of posting it online. The business results were amazing. So you can see that in Australia, actually they had consumption grew by 7% in 2011, just when they put names on the bottles. It reversed a 10-year decline in Coke sales in the US. And today they're running versions of this campaign everywhere. 80 countries, not everywhere, but 80 countries. So interestingly, you guys remember it came to Singapore, right? I have to say, I was horrified. Somebody said, oh, we have these great samples, right? We brought all these Cokes here. The first one I pulled out said auntie on it. How do you think I felt? And my colleague who laughed at me, I then went in and I pulled out uncle and gave it to him. And we were even. But in Singapore, actually, the complexity, the ethnic complexity was so great with the multicultural environment that they needed so many different names. It was difficult to even manage given the size of the market. So we ended up having little slogans, right? BFF and I love you and auntie and uncle, whatever. My least favorite ones. Wifey and hubby, those are a couple of the others. Right? So we probably had 50 or 60 different slogans like that. But again, the idea was, love it or hate it, it was all about my Coke, or a Coke that was targeted to me. So Paul Smith, the designer, did the natural thing, right? The big benefit for Coke, of course, it increased sales, but what they got as well was a huge amount of free advertising because, especially when it first came out, everybody, Paul Smith took a picture and posted it on his Instagram account. We started to see really very funny things happening. This is one of my favorites. So this is a man proposed to his girlfriend, beautiful Eloise, will you marry me? And I have to say that's a man's fridge, right? Yeah, we all see no food, right? That's definitely a man's fridge. Can be a woman's fridge too. I shouldn't be too sexist about it. But people got really carried away. So this is really cute, right? So this is a Spanish-speaking market. This little nativity scene. We have the baby Jesus here. We have Maria. We have Jose. We have the angels up here. We have Papa Noel on the side, right? Think of this. I mean, Coke is really lucky. This is about the most popular combination that I found in terms of images online was, of course, Elsa and Anna in various combinations of Coke products. People got very carried away as well. They just started having a little bit of fun with it. And eventually we get to the one, of course, that I like best. Right? So I didn't put an example here with somebody else's name on it. My favorite is definitely the one with my name on it. And not only that, but I like Coke Zero the best too. So it's really, really just right for me. Japan, of course, doesn't just copy what everyone else does. Japan likes to innovate. And Japan did a very interesting thing. When Share a Coke went to Japan, they launched it as part of a promotion for World Cup. Now, how many players are there on a World Cup team? More than 2? Yes, 11. If anybody saw the horrible video. So what they did actually was to encourage people to build a team. Right, team of images. And the way they did this is, by the way, this is actually a consumer. We happened to be up in Japan and saw somebody pawing through all the Coke bottles. So not only did every bottle have a name on it, of course, but it had a unique number, a unique code. You could go to coca-cola.jp, and what you did was start your World Cup team. So when you went up, of course, you would open your account, and you would put your own name in to be the first player on the team. You were the captain of the team. And as you drank more Coke, you could have more team players. So this was one of my colleagues was up there, and you can see then, she added me. By the way, this is our big boss, so she was very smart. She added the big boss first, and then she added me. And our team got bigger and bigger and bigger. And, she said at the end of the week she was really tired of Coke. She'd had more Coke than she'd had in a week before in her life, which, of course, would make Coke very happy because, of course, it's all fantastic for sales. Korea also did something very interesting. So in 2015, it was the 100th anniversary of the CocaCola bottle. I don't know, you'd think of this as a major milestone, but the shape of the bottle was 100 years old in 2015. So what they decided to do was they identified 2,000 people, 500, 1,500 online celebrities and 500 celebrities, 1,500 bloggers. And what they did is they sent them a set of Coke bottles, 5, with their photo on it. Now, these happen to be HP people, because we also ordered some just for fun. But the actual thing was you received a set of 5 Coke bottles that had your own photo on it. Now, these were all people present online, so their photos were available online, right? So it's pretty cool. They had a 6 times increase in sales. Because, of course, these are the people that are now talking about the fact that they couldn't believe it was possible to get your photo on the bottle. And, of course, they had a facility for people to do that as well. And, again, I'm just so self-absorbed. I have my favorite. I lost the real bottle. Somebody stole it, I like to think. I think they probably broke it, actually. But I have to just remember myself in image only. So Coke isn't the only brand that has gone online and done things with personalization. This is kind of an interesting example from Mondelez and Oreo. So you wouldn't really think of Oreo cookies as, they're not very colorful, right? They're just kind of brown and white, right? They're pretty ordinary. But this started actually in 2015 in the US, and it was actually a campaign where they advertised that you could go online and change the packaging. So what would happen is you'd start out by choosing a design from a portfolio of options. So you'd choose your art. Then you would give that art some color, and you have some buttons down here, so you'd start coloring it in. Then it was holiday time, so you gave it a little bit of this was joy, right? They had little holiday icons. And the last thing you did was you could order or you could put a personal note on it. So this was, and then in the end you started with something like this, and you ended up with something like that, which was then sent to you. And inside was just a whole selection of those little tubes of Oreo cookies. And because of the success in this, they decided to take this to China. And they did this last year in November 11th. So November 11th in China is 11/11, Singles Day, right? And they had anticipated China's a big place, but they said, well, we're not so sure how popular Oreos will be. So it's a 24-hour kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday type discount shopping day, right? So they went online, and they had the supply planned for the first 24 hours, and they sold out in 23 minutes. And they really had to stop because, of course, they had this special offer, and they're, of course, thinking, what are they going to do next year? But then, this isn't really my thing, but apparently adult coloring books are kind of a big deal. So even when you got your Oreo box, the inside was something the kids could color in. So they even put a toy on the inside, right? So it was a kind of fun for mom or whomever was ordering the outside, and then something for the kids afterwards. So interesting. I mean, I think, Oreo, as I say, Mondelez wasn't so sure that it was going to be so popular, but suddenly they found this element of personalization. Probably didn't hurt that it was, online and offered at a discount day, but 23 minutes to sell out their whole supply. I now want to move into another area where we're seeing, and by the way, if you think about it, both of those are very low on the sophistication of the data, right? So if you think about it, Coke doesn't count on it at the beginning that they don't know that Lisa's going to walk into that particular store to buy Coke, right? They're taking a chance by picking 150 names or 1,000 names that I'll go in and I'll see a name that I connect to and I'll want to buy that Coke. But once I do something like the Japan campaign, now Japan actually has an amazing database of people, and they know how many people drank 5 Cokes and how many people drank 6 Cokes and how many people drank 11 Cokes, right? So they know how dedicated and engaged you are, how much of a Coke junkie you might happen to be. This is an example from the publishing world, and this is a very interesting trend we're seeing, and it's about taking the concept of a storybook and turning it into the story for you. Instead of just a story, it becomes a story for you. And this is quite an interesting website. It's lostmy.name. They're based in the UK. They're at the moment looking at expanding quite dramatically in Asia, so we're looking forward to some other languages and some maybe interesting dynamics to come soon from them. But what they actually offer is what they call impossibly personal books. And the way these books work is quite cool. So you go online and you put in the first name of a child or person, it can be a grown-up, by the way, and whether it's a boy or girl. And now, actually, it also lets you choose with the boy or girl what skin tone you want. And for £29.95, they send you a book, no shipping charge, right? 0 free shipping anywhere in the world. So a friend of mine at HP saw this and thought this was really cool. So she ordered me this book. All right, so this is a book dedicated to Lisa. And it's a story about a little girl who wakes up in the morning, and when she wakes up, she has no name. She's panicked. She's very upset because she doesn't know who she is. So she goes off on an adventure. And the first thing she does on her adventure is she meets a lion. And the lion roars at her, but realizes then that she's crying and says, "What's wrong, little girl? How can I help you?" And she says, "I don't have a name." And he says, "Well, don't worry. You can have an L from my name. Right? I'm a lion." Then she goes on a little bit farther, and she meets an imp. And this imp is being really naughty, and she thinks this is very fun, right? And she starts to play with the imp, but then she remembers actually that she's sad, right? So she doesn't have a name, and the imp says, "Don't worry, you can have the I from my name." And she goes and she meets a squid. I think you know where this is going, right? She meets a squid, and the squid says, "You can have the S." And then she gets going and she meets the aardvark. "Oh, I have 2 A's at the beginning of my name. No problem, you can have one from me." So she finally goes home at the end, and then when she wakes up the next morning, she has a very pleasant day because her name, Lisa, is right there where it belongs. All right? Very sweet story. Now, what my colleague didn't know is that Lisa is not my given name. Remember, one price. My actual name is Elizabeth. She gets a much better book. A much better book, right? In fact, she has eagles and lions and zebras and aardvarks and all bears and all kinds of things happen to her, right? But interestingly, Elizabeth has 2 E's, and it would be really boring to meet 2 elephants, right? So one is an elephant and one is an elk. And I decided, my dear other half, who happens to be here today, doesn't know that I ordered a book for him also. But I never let him know about it because I need it. It's mine. And so you can see his came in the blue color. And his name is Joseph, his full name. I got him the long version. But there's an E in Joseph also. So what they ask me is the book for Elizabeth and the book for Joseph going to the same household? Because if it is, maybe you want to choose an elk, or an eagle, right? Another E character. Because you don't want two kids fighting over who gets the elephant and whatever, right? So you can imagine this would be a bedtime story nightmare if you have duplication, and that's not going to go very well. But very, very, very interesting. Oh, by the way, one of the things they do, they send you IKEA instructions when you get the book. And it's a simple guide to bedtime magic. And it's not what you think it is. It's actually instructions on how to read a story to a child. It's very cute, right? And at the back they say, please take a photo of your child when they discover their name and post it on our Facebook page. So very, very nice touch. So they weren't really happy or satisfied. They were very happy with this, by the way. Oh, I should show you some of the results. So in January of 2015, they were on Dragon's Den in 2014, and they managed to win. They won 100,000 pounds of funding on Dragon's Den. And in January, they had crossed the 100,000 books mark, and so they published this little map of the most popular first names in different parts of the world as just a little PR effort. Well, that actually increased their popularity, and by April, you can see they were up to 500,000 books already. Right. So now by the way, these are the four guys. So two are IT guys. One is a designer, one is a writer. And by June, they got to 600,000 books, but they managed to get massive funding. You can see $9 million from Google Ventures and Greycroft funding. So they are obviously on a roll and growing pretty amazingly now. So you can see now they've sold more than 2.5 million copies. They're in all kinds of countries. At this point, you can imagine the complexity of trying to do this in Chinese, because Chinese characters don't really lend themselves so nicely to being built in the same way. So I think that the R&D team is going to have a big challenge to get that one sorted out, but that is part of, I know what they're planning on doing. So the next step for them was to say, okay, we did something with your name. How about now we do something with your address? Because there's pretty cool stuff. We were going to send you the book. We know where you live. Or you will tell us where you live. So imagine that we had another type of adventure. And this is an adventure for a child. The incredible intergalactic journey home. So this is a story. Actually, this is the story of Elizabeth, because I thought maybe she'd get a better book. But actually, it's the same, right? This isn't about the letters in my name. But this is about Elizabeth and a little robot named Hubble that go on a space adventure and they get lost. Now, you have to live in North America or the UK in order for them to have this be available. So what they have is they use Google Earth, right? So what happens is I took my sister's address in the US. So here I am, Elizabeth and Hubble are lost in space. They come around. Pretty soon, they see planet Earth. Where's planet Earth here? They see planet Earth down below. They realize they're getting close. So my sister lives in Minneapolis, so here's a photo, right? So now they know she's going to be living right near Minneapolis, so they have a famous photo from Minneapolis. This is the Google Earth map, all right, of the area where she lives. And, of course, they know the exact street address. So this time, when Hubble finally brings Elizabeth home, she comes right to 1559 Eagle Lane, which is my sister's address, right? But would be my home if I were ordering it for me living in the US. So quite interesting. And this actually caught the attention of Tim Peake, who is one of the astronauts. He was actually a UK astronaut who was up in space. And they had a great program where they read stories to kids. So there was one very lucky guy who ordered this book, and he got to have his copy of the book read by Tim Peake from the International Space Station. How am I doing on timing? I'm okay. Okay, so the next example I want to share is quite different. Although, again, it's not so much based, it's more about customers providing data at the point that they're buying and interacting with a brand. So I quite like this example because it starts out with a brief to an agency. I spent a big part of my career working on the agency side, and you get some really terrible briefs. So this was actually one of those terrible briefs from Keds, the kids' shoes. In Israel, they actually have a brand of, like an extension into kids' apparel. And it's kind of like a Gap Kids type of shop, right? So it's specific to the shoe brand, but they're play clothes and pretty rugged kinds of things. And so every year, 3-4 times, they had a catalog. So and the Keds Kids team said, it's too expensive to print this catalog all the time. We want to change our marketing completely. So could you just come up with a great email, or maybe a postcard? Could we have a postcard? And they said, the brief is we want to send everybody a postcard instead of a catalog, and we want the customer to come into the store and pick it up. So think about that for a minute. So there's a shop that wants me to shop at there, and what they want me to do, they're going to send me a postcard saying, you know that catalog we always send you, that you probably throw away or whatever, but now we expect you to drive to the store and pick it up instead. Well, you're going to say, as a consumer, you say, why would I bother to do that? Right? This doesn't work. So the agency came up with a very, very interesting idea. They said, okay, we'll send a postcard, but we're not going to tell the customer first to go to the store. We're going to tell them to go to Facebook. And when they go to Facebook, they're going to have a chance to let their kids star on the cover of the catalog. Right? So basically what happened is each mom who got a postcard went to Facebook and uploaded photos of their children. I've got just a little short video that talks about
A very interesting campaign that I want to talk about is what I call an on-life campaign. It's a combination of online marketing with real life. We created a campaign for a fashion brand for kids. We wanted to take their existing customers in the real world and we wanted to migrate them to the fan page of the brand. We created 15,000 catalogs of the new collection that every mother could get in the store that she chooses, but her kids will basically star on the cover of the catalog, and she will also write a personal message to them. So every mother, during the first launch of the new collection, came to the stores and she got the catalog with her kids.
I just edited off the HP advertisement that follows that. So if you wonder why that was a bit abrupt. So the very interesting example, right? You heard that this is the guy from the agency, Rafi, and what he says in there is they printed 15,000 catalogs. They sent out 50 postcards. And they had 15,000 requests for catalogs. This is really a high response rate to a postcard, an amazing one. Right? And actually, initially they said only one per customer. And what they discovered is mom got really clever. Mom started trying to order them through multiple Facebook accounts. And then they would suddenly realize that the photos of the kids were the same. And they said, and at the same store. And, then they realized, like, what do you think mom is going to do? Actually, Rafi said what do you think mom is doing with these catalogs? What do you think, honestly, what is she going to do? She's going to give them to grandmother number 1, grandmother number 2, favorite auntie, right? All people who might well be shopping for or buying gifts for the kids, but who would love to have that memento, and who will keep that way beyond the time the collection has expired, right? So not only did he have 30% of moms came in or signed up, they also said there were like no orphans. So they had as a fallback that if mom didn't show up in the store, they would be able to send her by post the catalog. But no mom wants to abandon her children in the store, right? So mom, like 99% plus, actually went into the store to pick up the catalog. And this was the most stunning result of all. So when mom was there, she spent between $20 and $50 more in transaction value than their average shopping basket transaction from a just ordinary shopper. So very interesting result, right? So they saved money on printing catalogs. They saved a huge amount of money on postage because mom came in, and they had an increase in sales. And not only that, but the data that they collected, right? So this actually changed the way they market in the future, because this was kind of their first step. They ended up using it as a data collection exercise. Now they have 15,000 moms. Some of them ordered 2 catalogs, some ordered 3 catalogs. They know how much they shopped. They brought in they'd been able to track the purchases, so they were able to determine what the value of customers was. It changed everything about the way kids markets, certainly in Israel. So again, our world is really exploding with data. It's changing fast, and I think that maybe this is a little bit overused, but there are some things to learn about Charles Darwin, right? About the origin or the survival of species, right? It's not necessarily. I used to think it was survival of the fittest, and that meant strongest, but it doesn't. Right? It's not the strongest. It's not the strongest species that will survive, or even necessarily the most intelligent. In the end, the survivors are going to be those that are actually able to respond to change. And responding to this changing world is not necessarily easy, right? We have to really shift our thinking in a very dramatic way. We have to prioritize the collection of data in a proper way and the proper use of data. There's a very fine line between collecting data and becoming creepy about the way we target people and talk to them. So as I say, the journey isn't an easy one, and I think as we look at the companies and brands that are really succeeding, there are some things that we really see. I mean, first of all, they have a passion for data. You need to believe in data. You may need to test it to see how it works best for you, but you need to have a passion for data, a love for what it teaches you. You need to have courage. You're going to try new things. There are going to be things that are risky. Right? You don't know if it's really going to work as well as the old way, but having the courage to try those new things and learn from the failures as much as successes leads to the last point, which is it's a long-term plan. It's a long-term evolution. It's not something that suddenly we become data-driven marketers overnight. Right? These are things that are skills. I think we heard Stephen Sinek talk about this earlier. Things like job skills and job satisfaction, love, etc. These take a while to build. So the intelligence within the organization about how best to leverage data is something that builds over time. And I'd say the good news from our side certainly is that as the Direct Marketing Association of Singapore, we see a huge challenge ahead for all of us, but actually a huge opportunity for us to make a difference in the marketplace, and we're here to help. On the 4th of April, we're going to be launching a data-driven marketing certification program, which will be done together with the NTUC and U Associates program. We're partnering with ADMA, which comes out of Australia, and Deacon Digital. So basically, in just last year, I think it was August of last year, they announced an Australia Data-Driven Marketing Association, launched a joint program with Deakin University called Deacon Digital. So there is a certification that now fits the workforce standards and in Singapore as well as in Australia. So we're partnering with them. And the idea is that there will be a series of courses. Right? We'll have foundation as well as advanced levels. There will be classroom sessions, practical work sessions. The plan is for everyone who participates that you'll actually work on case studies that are from your own company. There'll be online exams and certification. We're working now on the funding scheme, so stay tuned for more information about that. We'll be launching the first run of that program in August of 2017. And so for more information, if any of you would like to have some more information, please you can either email us at datacert@dmas.org or just send it to us at info@dmas.org. That always works. We get something sent to info, we always reply with info, so that works out quite well. And I welcome all of you then to our data-driven world, the exciting opportunities we have ahead of us in this fast-changing and amazing, exciting world ahead. And I thank you all very much for your attention this afternoon. So I think we have a little bit of time for some questions. No, that's the photographer. No, not a question. Questions, anybody? No? Then life's easy. You're letting me off the hook so easily? No problem. Thank you.